In the everyday chaos of a local market, Peter, a young worker with Down syndrome, struggled to stay calm on his first day at work. But the peace was shattered when an angry customer began humiliating him with cruel words, while everyone around watched in silence, unwilling to step in. What no one knew was that among the customers, a famous Hollywood actor was observing the scene, and what he did next would leave everyone speechless. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. Peter, a 21-year-old young man with Down syndrome, was always known for his kindness and dedication. Despite his contagious energy, he faced internal battles that few could see. His relationship with his former stepfather, a cold and abusive man, had left deep scars on his self-esteem. Short flashbacks showed Peter as a child, sitting at the table while his stepfather hurled insults. "You'll never amount to anything, boy. Don't even try." The harsh tone and cruel words echoed in his mind as if it were yesterday. But Peter was resilient. Despite it all, he decided he would be stronger than any words meant to diminish him. Today, that spirit of perseverance was his greatest strength. The local market was small but lively. Shelves neatly stocked with various products, and the sound of carts rolling over the polished floor filled the air. Peter walked through the main door, wearing his uniform with pride. He was greeted by Jack, the manager, who welcomed him with an encouraging smile. "Welcome to the team, Peter. We're happy to have you with us." Peter eagerly shook Jack's hand. "Thank you, sir. I'll do my best." The training began immediately. Peter was introduced to his tasks, from organizing products to bagging groceries. He listened attentively, mentally noting every detail. His enthusiasm didn't go unnoticed by his colleagues, but neither did their discreet glances and comments about his slower pace. "He's a bit slow, isn't he?" one of the co-workers whispered, unaware that Peter overheard. Peter pretended not to notice and continued his work, determined to prove himself capable. By the end of the shift, he was exhausted but proud of completing his first day. As Peter finished bagging the last customer's groceries, a loud sigh came from the line. He glanced at the clock with relief, realizing his shift was nearly over. However, he didn't notice someone in the line, watching with growing impatience. This person's eyes narrowed as Peter continued, oblivious to the tension beginning to rise. The sound of the market's automatic doors sliding open announced the arrival of Karen, a 45-year-old woman with a rigid posture and an air of evident superiority. Her heels echoed across the tiled floor as she walked briskly down the main aisle. Karen wore a stern expression, her face already radiating disapproval before even assessing the situation. She stopped abruptly upon seeing the checkout lines, letting out an exaggerated sigh of irritation. "These stores never know how to organize things," she muttered, loud enough for the other customers to hear. Grabbing a cart, she pushed it forward with urgency, maneuvering through the aisles as though she were in a race. Karen hurriedly selected products, tossing them into the cart without care. Any minor obstacle, like a child in her path or another customer comparing prices, was met with impatient glares and audible scoffs. After filling her cart, Karen headed to the checkout. The line wasn't long, but to someone with so little patience it felt endless. She joined Peter's line, watching him from a distance as he carefully bagged a previous customer's items. Peter's methodical movements caught Karen's attention. "Is this for real?" she muttered, rolling her eyes. "How can someone this slow be working here?" When it was finally her turn, Karen slammed her items onto the counter, shoving them forward as if to physically express her frustration. Peter greeted her with a polite smile and a timid, "Good morning, ma'am." She responded with a cold glare and a sarcastic tone. "I hope it is good because I don't have all day." Peter began scanning Karen's items carefully, double-checking the codes and bagging them meticulously. However, her piercing stare seemed to burn into him. Every small movement he made was met with an audible sigh or the impatient tapping of her fingers on the counter. "Is this going to take long?" Karen asked, leaning forward. Because honestly, it feels like I'm watching this in slow motion." Peter's face turned visibly red, and his hands began to tremble slightly. He tried to move faster, but his nervousness only worsened his coordination. A package slipped from his hand and fell to the floor, prompting him to quickly crouch down to retrieve it. "Oh my God, he can't even hold the bag," Karen said loudly, glancing around as if seeking validation from the other customers. Peter kept trying to do his job, but his breathing grew heavier, and it was clear he was on the verge of tears. Karen crossed her arms, leaning even closer to the counter. "Someone needs to do something about this," she said, now raising her voice. "This is ridiculous. I don't have all day to deal with incompetence." Murmurs began to rise among the other customers as the tension in the line grew with each passing second. Karen was about to take another step closer to the counter when something unexpected began to shift the atmosphere of the market. Karen, now visibly enraged, stepped forward and pointed directly at Peter, her voice dripping with disdain. "This is unacceptable. You shouldn't be working here if you can't handle something as simple as bagging groceries. Who hired you? Because clearly it was out of pity." Peter's eyes widened at the force of her words. He tried to maintain his composure, but the trembling in his hands grew worse. Meanwhile, Karen turned to the other customers in line, seeking allies for her verbal assault. "Do you all see this? We're all being held up because of him." She gestured dramatically, as if putting on a performance. "This is a fast lane, and he is anything but fast." The cruel words cut through Peter like blades. He lowered his gaze to the counter, trying to focus on the groceries, but another bag slipped from his hands and fell to the floor. The sound of the bag hitting the tiles seemed to amplify his humiliation. "Look at that," Karen exclaimed, laughing with sarcasm. "He can't even hold a bag. This is pathetic." Peter swallowed hard, his breathing uneven as he tried to pull himself together. He knew he needed to finish the transaction, but the pressure and embarrassment were becoming unbearable. He glanced toward Jack, the manager, who was across the store, preoccupied with another task. Karen's harsh words triggered painful memories from Peter's past. He recalled sitting at the kitchen table as a child, his stepfather hurling similar insults at him. "You'll never get anything right, boy. You're dead weight, and everyone knows it." In the memory, Peter hunched his shoulders, trying to shrink away from the harsh words, but they always found him. He felt the same tightness in his throat now as he did back then, standing in front of Karen. "I just want to help," he whispered to himself, his voice barely audible. Karen, noticing that Peter was shaken, took another step closer. She pointed her finger at him as if reprimanding a child. "Someone needs to teach you how to do a real job. You're holding everyone up." Her voice was loud enough to echo through the store, drawing the attention of customers in other aisles. Some customers in line began murmuring among themselves. A few seemed to silently agree, while others looked visibly uncomfortable. Several pulled out their phones, recording the unfolding scene. Peter tried to open his mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come out. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he fought to keep them from falling. At that moment, the sound of firm footsteps approaching the line drew everyone's attention. Karen's gaze, still fixed on Peter, was interrupted by someone who had finally decided to step in. The market seemed to plunge into an uncomfortable silence. The usual chatter of cashiers, the hum of shopping carts gliding over the tiled floor, and the buzz of customers were all muffled by the tense atmosphere that hung heavily in the air. All eyes were now on the checkout line, where Karen gestured angrily, her sharp voice resonating throughout the space. "This is an insult to my time," she exclaimed, throwing her arms in the air. "I can't believe I have to deal with this." The other customers in line kept their eyes glued to their phones or the ground, visibly uneasy but unwilling to intervene. An older woman at the back of the line leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Isn't someone going to do something? That poor boy looks so lost." The husband shrugged hesitantly. I don't know. We don't want to cause trouble, do we?" Karen, on the other hand, seemed completely unaware of the discomfort she was causing. She was consumed by her own indignation, her voice growing louder as Peter's patience visibly wore thin. The once inviting market now felt oppressive for Peter. He glanced around, noticing the mixture of judgmental, pitying, and indifferent gazes surrounding him. The fluorescent light above his head made his vision feel blurry, as if it was intensifying his vulnerability. Karen continued her tirade, making a deliberate effort to emphasize every word for the benefit of the other customers in line.
This is what we're paying for? This kind of service? He's way too slow. This is unacceptable. The tension in the line felt almost tangible, a physical weight pressing down on everyone. Some customers tried to ignore it, while others nervously glanced between Karen and Peter, silently hoping someone would step in. Peter, still trying to finish bagging the groceries, finally summoned the courage to speak. His voice came out trembling, almost inaudible, but filled with sincerity. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm trying my best." Karen turned sharply toward him, leaning over the counter with a look of pure disdain. "Trying? That's not enough. Not for a job like this. People here have schedules to keep, and you're wasting everyone's time." Peter lowered his gaze, feeling incapable of responding. His already trembling hands let another bag fall to the floor. The sound echoed through the market, each noise amplifying his humiliation. Karen let out a short, cruel laugh. "Oh my God, he can't even hold a bag. This is pathetic." Some customers began exchanging subtle glances, visibly uncomfortable. A younger man in the middle of the line hesitated before pulling out his phone to record the scene. He turned to the woman next to him and whispered, "This is awful, but who's going to stop her?" The woman shrugged nervously, her expression uneasy. "She's so aggressive. I don't want to get involved." Meanwhile, an older woman at the back of the line seemed to be gathering courage. She adjusted her purse on her shoulder and took a step forward, but hesitated, looking at Peter with sympathy. The decision to act felt like a heavy burden she wasn't sure she could carry. Karen, realizing no one was contradicting her, took it as encouragement to continue. She turned back to Peter and in an even louder tone declared, "If you can't do this job, then go do something else. Someone needs to tell you that." Peter, visibly shaken, focused intently on his task. He took deep breaths, but the air felt thin. His sweaty hands struggled to hold the bags, and his eyes stayed fixed on the counter, avoiding Karen's penetrating gaze. Across the store, Jack, the manager, finally began noticing something was wrong. He glanced toward Peter's checkout line, but was too far away to hear clearly. Frowning, he started walking toward the commotion, but was stopped by another customer asking for assistance. Meanwhile, Karen continued her rant. She crossed her arms and turned to the other customers in line, seeking validation. "Do you all see this? We're all being delayed because of him. It's absurd that someone like this is working in a fast lane." The murmurs in the line grew louder, but still, no one had the courage to confront her. Each second dragged on endlessly, and the discomfort was almost unbearable. To the side of the aisle, partially hidden by the shelves of goods, a man stood watching the scene. His posture was calm, but his expression was difficult to read. Dressed simply, he blended in with the crowd, but his eyes were locked on the unfolding situation. He crossed his arms, tilting his head slightly, as if analyzing every detail. His expression wasn't one of surprise, but rather calm contemplation, as if he'd seen something similar before. Peter, still focused on his work, didn't notice the man's presence, but felt a subtle shift in the air around him. It was as if the crushing weight of the situation was about to be balanced, though he didn't know how. Karen, however, remained oblivious to everything around her. Her attention was entirely on Peter and her growing outrage. The tension in the market seemed to reach a breaking point. The murmurs in the line grew louder, and the customers' frustration was palpable. Yet still, no one acted. The man, still standing quietly, took a step forward, becoming more visible to the customers in line. His gaze was fixed on Karen, and he seemed to be waiting for the right moment to act. The energy in the air shifted, and some customers began to notice his presence, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Peter, unaware, briefly lifted his eyes and met the man's gaze. It was a look that carried both calm and determination, offering Peter a brief moment of solace, even though he didn't understand why. Karen was about to speak again, her voice already rising in pitch, when the man took another step forward. The entire market seemed to hold its breath. Something was about to change. The tension in the market had reached its peak. Karen, gesturing furiously, continued raising her voice, each word dripping with impatience and disdain. Peter, with trembling hands, struggled to stay focused, but his body felt frozen under the crushing weight of the moment. The silent stares from the customers in line only amplified his sense of isolation and vulnerability. Then, a calm yet firm voice broke through the suffocating atmosphere. "That's enough." The words echoed through the market, carrying both authority and serenity. Everyone turned, searching for the source of the unexpected interruption. Karen froze for a moment, startled by being confronted. From across the aisle, a tall man with a confident posture walked toward the scene. He didn't rush, but each step he took carried a weight that drew everyone's attention. The customers in line, previously motionless, began whispering among themselves. "Who is that?" a woman asked, squinting to get a better look. "Wait, is that him?" a younger man said, already pulling out his phone to record. Keanu Reeves stepped into everyone's view. Dressed in a simple shirt and casual pants, he could have gone unnoticed anywhere else, but in that moment, his presence was unmistakable. Karen, still trying to maintain her composure, turned to him with an expression of irritation mixed with confusion. "And you think you can just show up here and tell me how to act?" Her voice carried sarcasm, but there was a hint of nervousness in her tone. Keanu stopped a few steps away, his eyes steady, though his demeanor remained calm. "I'm not telling you how to act," he replied, his voice calm yet commanding. "I'm saying that what you're doing right now is wrong." Karen blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Wrong? You don't even know what's going on here. I'm just stating the facts. This boy is holding everyone up." Keanu allowed a small smile, though the intensity in his eyes never wavered. "The facts? The fact is, he's doing his job, and you've chosen to humiliate him for it. There's a big difference between stating facts and using them as a weapon." The murmurs among the surrounding customers grew louder, but this time the attention was on Karen, not Peter. Peter, still frozen behind the counter, looked at Keanu with wide, uncertain eyes. He couldn't understand why this man was stepping in, but he felt a wave of relief, as if someone had finally heard his unspoken plea for help. Keanu took a step closer to Peter, his expression softening. "What's your name?" he asked, his tone both calm and encouraging. "But Peter," the young man stammered, his voice trembling. Keanu nodded. "Peter, you're doing a great job here. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." He gently placed a reassuring hand on Peter's shoulder, as if transferring some of his confidence to him. "We all have tough days, but those don't define who we are. Do you understand that?" Peter nodded slowly, his eyes welling up with tears. He couldn't find the words to respond, but the crushing weight he felt moments before now seemed a little lighter. Karen, now visibly uncertain of her stance, crossed her arms and let out a short, nervous laugh. "Look, I don't know who you think you are, but this has nothing to do with you. I just want fast service, and he's clearly not up to the job." Keanu turned to her, his expression shifting to something more serious. "I'm someone who believes in respect. It doesn't cost anything to be kind, and you've clearly lost sight of that." Karen scoffed, but her voice no longer carried the same strength. "I have the right to be frustrated. I'm wasting my time here." Keanu nodded slightly. "You absolutely have the right to feel frustrated. What you don't have is the right to take that frustration out on someone who's done nothing to deserve it, especially someone who's here to help." The customers, who had been passive until now, started to chime in. A woman in the middle of the line spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "He's right. It's not fair to treat the young man like this."
Another person, standing closer to Karen, added, "We're all waiting in line. No one else is complaining. What makes you think you're different?" Murmurs of support for Keanu began to grow. Karen looked around, realizing the support she had expected wasn't there. Instead, she found herself surrounded by disapproving gazes. The customers nodded in agreement, many still recording the moment on their phones. The energy in the market had completely shifted. What had been a scene of oppression was now an example of unity. Before leaving, Keanu turned back to Peter. "Keep being yourself," he said, smiling, "because who you are is already more than enough." As Keanu walked out of the market, the customers continued applauding. But Peter knew that moment wouldn't be forgotten anytime soon. He looked at the line and saw the supportive and encouraging expressions. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he mattered. The echo of Karen's heels faded as she exited through the market's automatic doors. The brief silence that followed her departure was quickly replaced by murmurs among the customers. Conversations about what had just unfolded spread through the line, with some still glancing at the videos they had recorded on their phones. "She had no right to talk to him like that," an older woman remarked to the person next to her. "That was incredible. I never imagined someone like Keanu Reeves would show up here," another customer replied, still in awe. Meanwhile, as others reflected on the event, Peter remained frozen behind the counter, still processing everything that had happened. He stared at his hands, as if trying to understand how a moment of humiliation had transformed into something so powerful. Jack, the market manager, who had finally come over to check on the situation, placed a hand on Peter's shoulder. "Are you okay, Peter?" he asked with genuine concern. Peter looked at Jack and gave a small smile. "Yes, I'm okay." There was something different in his voice, a touch of confidence that hadn't been there before. Keanu's words echoed in his mind. "Your worth isn't measured by how quickly you bag groceries. Your worth is who you are." Peter took a deep breath, as if releasing a weight he had carried for far too long. As Peter returned to work, the customers in line began treating him differently. A woman smiled warmly as she handed him her items. "You're doing a great job, Peter. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." An older man in the line also made a point to speak up. "Hey son, keep it up. You've got more courage than most people out there." These small but sincere words were like bricks rebuilding Peter's self-esteem, one at a time. With the atmosphere in the market completely transformed, a sense of solidarity now filled the air. Customers chatted among themselves, many praising Peter or discussing the impact of small acts of kindness. A young woman, still holding her phone, approached Jack. "That was amazing. Did you see how he handled everything? You should post this on social media. People need to know how incredible Peter is." Jack smiled and nodded. "I agree. But right now, the most important thing is making sure he knows that." Unexpectedly, the market felt more like a community than a place of commerce. Those who had been merely waiting minutes earlier were now conversing like old friends. When his shift finally ended, Peter walked to the locker room with slow steps. He sat on a wooden bench, staring at his uniform, reflecting on everything that had happened that day. For so long, he had believed he was invisible, that people only saw his mistakes or his differences. But today felt different. Keanu's words had ignited a flame within him, something he barely knew existed: pride in himself. He remembered his mother's words that morning, telling him how important he was to their family. Now, he was beginning to believe it. Outside the market, Keanu Reeves walked calmly toward a parked car. He wasn't seeking recognition or applause. For him, this was just another day of doing what he believed was right. Before getting into the car, he glanced back at the market one last time and smiled. He knew that moment wasn't about him, but about Peter, and the way a single act of empathy could change the course of a day, perhaps even a life. The next day, the event's impact began spreading. The video of Keanu defending Peter went viral, shared by millions across the globe. Hashtags like ***# Respect for Peter, asterisk, asterisk, and asterisk, asterisk, hash. Kindness matters, asterisk, asterisk, trended, drawing attention to the importance of treating everyone with dignity. Those who had been present in the market that day shared their experiences, inspiring others to reflect on how small actions could have a big impact. Peter, who had once been afraid of being noticed, was now seen as a symbol of resilience and strength. The narrator closes the story with a reflection on the power of choice. Every day gives us the opportunity to be kind, to lift others up instead of tearing them down. No matter how small the action seems, it can have a profound impact. In the end, we are all responsible for creating a world where respect and empathy are the norm, not the exception. The next morning, as Peter walked to the market, something felt different. He no longer carried the weight of cruel words that had once haunted him. Instead, he carried the words of encouragement and support he had received the day before. When he entered the market, customers in the checkout line greeted him with warm smiles and words of encouragement. He smiled back, feeling like he belonged. In that moment, he knew he would never feel alone again. Asterisk. If you enjoyed this story, we have many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore more stories of hope, compassion, and resilience.